Hello, I am Daksha.
So I would request everyone to mute their mics. Can we have that? Everyone can mute them first. जब हम जिसको जो बोलेंगे वो अपना ऑन कर लेंगे. So this is a request because there's a lot of
mute.
Has also joined. Dr. Koka has joined.
Otherwise, and we really want to hear. Interesting, invigorating session on our ex-presidents. I greet everyone on behalf of AIWC. I can see all senior members here. I can see Asha. Like senior members, I welcome you all to this seminar today. As you all know, this is an ongoing seminar, and in this we try to remember, know about our presidents. हमारी जो पुरानी पहले प्रेसिडेंट्स थी ऑल इंडिया विमेन्स कॉन्फ्रेंस की, उनको हम इसमें याद करते हैं, उनके बारे में जानने का प्रयास रहता है, और उनके बारे में जितनी ज्यादा से ज्यादा जानकारी मिले, अलग अलग आप पीपीटी के थ्रू वेरियस मोड्स we invite scholars. So this is like to get knowledge about them, and the purpose of this is to get inspired, because they were such great ladies, great achieved visionaries in their own right, and they did things which आज ऐसे काम उन्होंने किए अभी हम नहीं सोच पाते. So they were much ahead of their times, and that's one thing which really after hearing all these about all these ladies, I am now before we start the program, I think we have words about this program. Sheila ji, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Yutika ji. Namaskar and welcome to all my sisters who have enthusiastically joined in today's webinar to know more about our 8th and 9th presidents. I extend warm welcome on behalf of AIWC family to Mrs. Raminder Kalsi, Mrs. Asha Chandra, Dr. Kavita Karishma Koka from London, and express my gratitude for taking lot of interest in our series of past presidents and provide us with lot of information about our dear presidents. Few lines to keep you informed that our esteemed speakers have done extensive research work to find out about our 8th president, Lady Abdul Quadir, who was born in Lahore in 1883, the time when India and Pakistan were together. She founded the Lahore Ladies Club in 1938. She represented Pakistan at International Women's Conference at Istanbul and attended several other international meetings. Mrs. Kalsi and our member, Mrs. Maithili Jagannathar, are going to throw light on Lady Qadir's work. And our 9th president, Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, was our president in 1935. With efforts of Shivaniji, Maithiliji, we have 3 speakers to talk about Mrs. Hilla Faridoonji. Mrs. Faridoonji was our president in the year 1935, and she was the founder secretary of All India Women's Education Fund in 1929. She was one of the first administrators of Lady Irwin College when it opened in 1932. She was a close associate of Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay and became a close friend of Mahatma Gandhi later on. Our new friends who have joined in today, for the sake of them, let me give the few instances of our journey, AIWC's journey. AIWC started its journey way back in 1927 with the efforts of an Irish lady, Mrs. Margaret Cousins, Dr. Annie Besant, Dr. Sarojini Naidu, and had Maharani Chimnabai Gaikwad II of Baroda state as our first president for the education of women. Lady Irwin College in Delhi was initiated by AIWC. We are still continuing that work in addition to education. AIWC through its branches all over the country, nearly 500 of them with 1 lakh of membership. We work for health programs for women and children with different aspects. We run renewable energy programs, communal harmony and peace workshops, women's safety and counseling, short stay homes in different states, working women's hostel, old age homes for women. AIWC had initiated home for abandoned old widows at Vrindavan, UP, way back in late 80s. At our head office, Sarojini House at 6 Bhagwan Das Road, New Delhi, we have a shelter home for women in distress, community college for less privileged children, Margaret Cousins Library and Research Center where a lot of international students also get benefited. This is in memory of our founder, Mrs. Margaret Cousins. AIWC head office also has solar panels for supplying hot water to our working women's hostel, housing nearly 250 women. We also have working solar dryers, and recently we have started with rainwater harvesting pit, and we have constructed a sewage water treatment plant in our campus. The treated water is being used for our garden. Before independence, a lot of our leaders had participated in the freedom movement and later had initiated reforms like Sharda Act. AIWC has consultative status in United Nations and at UNFCCC. Recently, in January 2021, Parliamentary Committee of Home Affairs had invited the management to give recommendations for atrocities on women and safety measures. This is a brief work that AIWC has been doing for last 94 years. Thank you very much. And I think Yutika and Supriya ji, let us begin for the program for which we have gathered here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila ji. Thank you so much, Sheila ji, for enlightening the gathering about the purpose and the and Sheila ji also enlightened us that this is the 8th and 9th president we are going to talk about. And earlier we did on the past 7 presidents. And this is the 8th and 9th in line. We are going to talk about Lady Abdul Quadir. She was the 8th president. And then Mrs. Hilla, Rustomji, Faridoonji. And a word about our library first.
Yes.
I might inform you all about the library, which also takes a lot of pains to gather information, and we have a very good archives with the efforts of the office. We have managed to gather a lot of information about our past presidents and the work of the AIWC, and I would invite all of you to take of that. आप सभी से रहेगा विजिट करें या वर्चुअली भी आप उसको अप्रोच कर सकते हैं थ्रू योर ईमेल्स एंड ऑल. और लाइब्रेरी का इसमें काफी बड़ा रोल रहा, जैसे कि सारी प्रेसिडेंट्स के presidential addresses, so many photographs are there in the collection, and their articles, some articles that have been written either by the members or by So these programs are archived. So this was the information I wanted to share with you all. So let's start the program. And I'm sure everyone is very excited to know more about these great ladies. So to begin with, I would like to invite Mrs. Raminder Kalsi, Secretary, All India Women's Conference, South Punjab Branch. Raminder ji, the mic is yours. You have a PPT with you. And before we start, I would request the speakers to limit to about 8 to 9 minutes, 10 minutes maximum, so that we can hear everyone out nicely in time. Mrs. Raminder Kalsi, she is going to talk about the pioneering work in Muslim women's welfare and education in Punjab by Lady Abdul Qadir. Over to you, Mrs. Kalsi. Yeah, Mrs. Kalsi, can you hear us? Raminder ji? Am I audible? I think she cannot hear me. Can you hear Mrs. Kalsi? Yeah. Can you hear me?
I think she cannot hear you.
No, I think we have Vinita to speak about that. Mrs. Kalsi's speech is going to be read by Vinita. Vinita, are you there?
But I got
Vinita.
Vinita is not there.
Vinita is also there.
That's what Mathili told. Is she there?
No, Vinita is also there.
Vinita is supposed to read out Mrs. Kalsi's
Okay.
speech.
So I would request Mrs. Vinita Bharti, SCM South Punjab Branch. Are you there, Vinita ji? To kindly let us know about the role of Lady Abdul Qadir. Vinita ji?
Vinita?
Hello.
Hello. Vinita.
Sheila ji, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Yes.
you.
Yes, we can.
Now you're- Yeah.
This is Mrs. Kalsi.
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Come on, go ahead.
Will you speak?
You can begin your speech.
Yeah.
Kalsi ji.
I managed to hear me well.
No, we can hear you. We can hear
Okay,
you.
okay. So I few words.
Yes.
We all
So,
can hear you.
Madam President, great to see your face.
Yes. Nice to see you.
Okay. All right. So, a very warm welcome to the respected
Videos
participants.
also. So that
At today's webinar on our past presidents, Abdul Qadir and Rustomji Faridoonji, the 8th and 9th presidents of the All India Women's Conference. First and foremost, I congratulate the team of the All India Women's Conference who have conceived this theme on reflecting upon the illuminous string of presidents of this prestigious organization. Span of the country overseas, allowing the areas to pale into insignificance would be unbelievable. आप सोचिए अगर किसी वजह से इनके बारे में हम रिव्यू ना करते इतने साल से तो नहीं हो पाया किसी वजह so it would have been snatching from the present generation a valuable
Information.
you can hear me?
Yes. Yes.
You
Go on.
Okay.
Snatching
Snatching from them
voice.
a very valuable opportunity to be made aware and awakened about the true pioneers and stalwarts who built and brought to this maqam the All India Women's Conference. The times of its inception were specially trying. The nation had a volley of women who were a class apart and waiting to come forward to exhibit their grit, strength, and culture in as many ways as possible. A determination unparalleled to any times to come. The country reeling under the British Raj needed much upliftment in the sector of women and children. There were no backing of any constitution or a categorically earmarked institution of mandate or law, which would offer any guidelines or support to the women who wanted to rise to the occasion of active participation and exercise their rights in any formal field. कोई भी औपचारिक क्षेत्र में आने के लिए वो वेट कर रही थी कि उनको कोई प्लेटफॉर्म मिले. But during the British Raj, there was a lot of obstructions and not much was being given to them. The endeavors had to be only at the personal level to fight against the system. Personal means जैसे आगे चल के we'll talk कि लेडी कादिर ने कैसे अपने घर में ये gatherings करी. So to fight against a system which was totally bereft of sincerity or sympathy for the Indian women from the British. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
As we visualize the single-handed bugle that these selected women stood up and sounded to the authorities to announce their war through the presence in society, we come to this extremely soft-looking and petite-bodied lady called Anwari Begum. At 50 years, the lady was in deep awe at the time by the likes of Sarojini Naiduji, Margaret Cousins, of course, our mentor, the founder of All India Women's Conference at Pune 1927, along with Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay, who organized the All India Women's National Conference of 1930 as assistant organizer. Mrs. Kamla Devi's keen interest and love for this organization made her go out of the way till her last days at the India International Center, when she, on a wheelchair, took the trouble to come all the way to Chandigarh to participate, to be a special guest of honor at the inauguration of the Working Women's Hostel of this branch, and to personally honor the founder of the South Punjab branch, Mrs. Pritpal Kaur Vasu. Born in 1983, Anwari Begum, who later became Lady Abdul Qadir, since her most learned husband was knighted as Sir Abdul Qadir by the British, took her formal education in languages of Urdu, Persian. She also acquainted herself with basic English to carry on her practical work of those times. A proud nationalist, she made no secret of her preference for non-English languages. 1930 में जो एड्रेस किया था इन्होंने एक सेमिनार, उसमें उठ के she said, I would have been much happier अगर मेरे को इंग्लिश के बजाय उर्दू या पर्शियन में कहने को बोला जाता, but nonetheless मैं बोलूंगी. And she made this clear in her address in the gathering. This was a deep contrast. This was in very deep contrast to her husband, who was bar at law from Lincoln's in London and the editor-in-chief of the first English daily started by Muslims called The Observer, which we see today. This Observer, he was the first editor, English daily, her husband, Sir Abdul Qadir. Her own parental family was also an aristocratic one, and she came as a father from barrister Sheikh Muhammad Umar. Urdu writing was her intrinsic character, and she became the assistant editor of the Urdu journal Makhzan, started by her husband, Sir Abdul Qadir. So she was participating in it very actively and was the assistant editor. what is striking is that in absence of auditoriums and formal conference halls of those times, she began to collect and address gatherings of women from her own palatial bungalow at Lahore, located in Dilkusha Road. Kabhi to dil karta hai Google karke pata kare, I don't know abhi bhi exist karegi ki nahi. But time was short because of COVID. I couldn't go to Punjab Library, Punjab University Library and Punjabi University Library, which would have more on this couple because they were from the undivided Punjab of that time. You see, Lahore was Punjab. And also the selected gathering of today at the webinar, I would like to tell you that Sir Abdul Qadir was born in Ludhiana in joint Punjab. So like Sahir Ludhianvi, he was sometimes called Ludhianvi also. And he was tirelessly engaged in groups of women to propagate issues like her. And she, of course, went on to strike hard on Sati. Women franchise. Incidentally, women franchise came to India at the same time as our inception of the AIWC, which was 1927. 1927, they gave the franchise to women in most of the provinces, but Bengal and Orissa came later around 1929. So by the end of the decade, by 1930, the nation overall had women franchise. So this was all going on simultaneously, the fight of these stalwarts, Sarojini ji and Rajmata Amrit Kaur, and then also Begum Anwari ji. And women empowerment in every sense also, that she wouldn't leave any stone unturned to talk about it. These aspects too were her main thrust as the president of the AIWC in 1933. This post was her dream come true, since she was looking up in the past years to the iron ladies who were heading the organization and steering it with such grit and focus and determination during each of their 6 presidencies. Today, what is most striking through her reflections is the unity and oneness of the Muslim and non-Muslim social structure of that time. Her husband and she both were brimming with nationalism and patriotism for women as a whole in the country. The highlight being that Sir Abdul Qadir, he addressed the historic All Asian Women's Conference. Imagine, held at Lahore in the town hall in January 1931. He not only graced that occasion, but he was the main guest of honor, and he steered through the entire conference, Asian Women's Conference of those times, in those times. And his insight into the process of forward march for women and the liberal ideas were evergreen and applicable even in schemes of the day today, nearly a century later, which is few years, it will be 2023, 100 years from 1930. Both the husband and wife traversed hand in hand into the march for this women's justice and development, a remarkable contribution in view of those limited times and trials. How blessed are we, sisters, to have been spearheaded by such invaluable team of women who've been our coveted presidents and the torch bearers. Indeed, indeed. Let us be genuinely inspired and spirited by them and uphold these values. All the presidents, I see Beena ji, I see Sheila ji, maybe some more, especially all of you, to keep in mind that, you know, we, for these values, we are the heirs of these investments made by our predecessors. And as heirs, we must protect them and carry them on for future generation. The torch must be passed on to the next in line. I remember in my case, Vinita sitting there. In as much as it's shinery as possible. We mustn't let this go. We mustn't let this go. This is for all of you, my sisters sitting there. Thanking you all for showering your efforts and taking interest in this very poignant and worthwhile subject. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, Raminda ji. That was such a great talk. It was so informative and full of emotional
Passion, emotion.
So I can
This
see
is the least I could do because Maithili, when
No.
she called me, all I had in front of me was the article which she has so painstakingly written in Roshni, I think. So from this article, not much was available. So I have not really done justice to this because I should have been knowing much more about this gorgeous, petite little lady, so strong and shining. But now, as soon as this COVID is through, this is just a speech. I don't call it in participation, frankly speaking. I will get going to find more about her and bring it forward to you somehow or the other, maybe through Roshni and other times. Thank you so much.
Sure. Raminda ji, thank you so much. You have really, ignited the light switch which has been lying latent. Aapne hum sab
My fortune, my privilege.
ज़्यादा, charge kar. Really, thank you again.
Hello?
And you're most,
Can you hear me?
most welcome.
No.
I tell you once again, welcome,
Hello, can you
Raminda
hear
ji.
me?
Come to the library. Come to the library. Was actually.
Yes.
So the next is
Thank you very much, Raminda ji.
the 8th Aiwc session.
Okay. Share kar. Okay.
I now invite
Shall I
Maithili.
start?
Maithili, please. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Friends, today I want to take you 90 years back to 1933, Calcutta, where the 8th session of AIWC is about to begin. The session was held at the stately town hall of Calcutta. Although the capital had shifted to Delhi some 20 years back, Calcutta still remained the jewel of the East with its stately buildings, broad avenues, and the historic monuments. This is the town hall of Calcutta, where the session was held in 1933 December. 27 December was the first day. So ladies, we can imagine our delegates arriving in hot carriages called buggies, alighting near the red carpeted stairs, ceremoniously welcomed to the into the hall with the Calcutta band playing music in the background. There were 200 delegates from 50 constituent branches, and there were invitees from women's organizations in the United Kingdom, Canada, Iran, and Egypt. So there would have been about 300 delegates at that very grand conference which was held in Calcutta. The inaugural address was given by Maharani Sucharu Devi. You just saw her photograph. Here she is. She was the Maharani of Mayurbhanj state in Odisha, and she gave the inaugural address, after which there were many distinguished speakers. One of these distinguished speakers was Sir S. Radhakrishnan. He was to become vice president about 20 years later. While commending the work of AIWC in improving the status of women, he gave a warning that the progress in women's life should never be at the cost of our traditional values, of our culture, of tolerance, brotherhood, family and social values.
हाँ हो गया ना सारा
But
हाँ कब लेकर आ रहा
Sheila,
But we should ensure its continuity down generations, because women are not only the custodians of cultural values, but also ensure its continuity from one generation to another, and this should be kept in mind while planning any welfare work for women. Listening with rapt attention to the thinker philosopher of world fame, the delegates found it hard to answer when he asked, is it any use if we achieve freedom but carry with us the entire baggage of superstition, illiteracy, divisions of class and creed? Will we be even able to sustain our freedom? Just think over it. Will we pass the test of a civilized people living in a civilized nation? These values, which he stressed, have all along been kept in view by AIWC in all our programs. As we said at the beginning, the president of the session was Lady Abdul Quadir, and her address was remarkably free and frank. The previous speaker has just told you that she was not educated in the formal sense. She was educated by a governess at home, as was usual in those days. But she was a very literate person, very creative. She was a very good writer. But in the beginning of her speech, she said, I do not speak to you as a person of great distinction or academic distinction, but I speak to you as a worker with women, the one who goes door to door, speaking to them, finding out their problems, trying to sort out their issues. So this is how I am addressing you at this conference. Initially, she spoke of the syllabus for the girls' schools, in which the design and quality of education should be more relevant and should also make the girls wide awake citizens of the country. Sorry, just arranging the PPT. Can you hear me, Yutika?
yes. Yes,
Yes, we
yes,
can.
actually.
अच्छा अच्छा एक मिनट अभी नहीं अभी रहने नहीं स्क्रीन पूरा ये डालने का दिन इसको साइड में डाल के मेरा भी शेयर करेंगे शेयर नहीं होगा ठीक तो कितनी trying to share the screen anyway
Yeah,
So-
we can see this.
you can see अच्छा हाँ अपने को भी लिखा About resolutions, she said, I don't feel happy passing resolutions, however noble, whether it is education, health, or food. Why pass resolutions and wait for the government to do it? It is better we show our sincerity by going into communities, lend a helping hand in the health care of women and children. Let us go and provide amenities for girls' education, provide teaching aids, facilities that will raise the standard of education. Let us reach out services to poor families in remote villages, raise funds to give poor children a better deal in life. Lady Quadir pointed out that already we can see that a change is going to come. Very soon, one man will not be able to provide livelihood to the entire family. Wives and daughters will also go out to work because of. So when we design the education for children, for girls, we should think of how they can also earn a livelihood and teach them the appropriate technical sciences or academic education should be trained so that they can also be earning members of the family. because this is how the future families will run. And she also made a prediction that after a few years, marriage will no longer be the only option for girls. Girls will be able to work and hold their own, just as men do. I don't know if it was, if people agree to that, but that's what she said. As we have heard earlier, she was a prolific writer of journals and articles. And in the speech also, she said, she suggested that to reach out to women and to reach out to families, it's not enough to hold meetings or give articles in newspapers. To go to the home, it is better we have small skits or plays or write little songs the children can recite and sing, or women's group can learn. So in this way, we can use the media to reach out into the family and into the home. And our message will be heard by everyone who needs it.
You may go to the next slide, Maithili ji.
Okay. Okay. Slide is very slow in moving. Could you give me a little time? This slide is not moving for some reason.
Okay, Maithili.
You can close
Acha.
the PPT and restart again.
Oh, that will take a long time.
No, just
give us the facts, Maithili. Don't forget
Okay.
the people. Because
Okay,
it's quite
let's have it.
interesting what you're saying.
Okay,
What you are
okay.
saying is very interesting.
Thank you,
Forget
thank
the
you.
PPT. Just give
Okay.
us the information.
Okay, okay. So I'll go to the third day of the conference, which was very eventful because there was a lot of excitement as Poet Laureate Rabindranath Tagore arrived punctually at 4 p.m. He was received ceremoniously in his speech full of humor and applauded repeatedly. He lauded the silent heroism of women who made daily sacrifices for the family. He described their characteristics as sweetness of service, simplicity, self-dedication, and he offers his services in whatever way AIWC wanted in the cause of women of India. After that, a girls' chorus sang his composition Janaganamana with Margaret Cousins accompanying on the piano, and the entire gathering stood up and repeated the words. I don't know if they sang it properly, but they repeated the words of the song. The 8th session was a historic one for another reason. Because on the last day, it was the centenary celebrations of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and the entire delegation went to the Senate Hall of Calcutta University, and there they paid homage to this great son of India who opened the way to the emancipation of women of India. I would like to tell you a little more about the resolution directives. PPT has just agreed to cooperate. Acha. Okay. I have not given that, just a few of the resolutions I've given here because the education ones, I think, are well known to us. Removal of illiteracy must have precedence over electoral reforms because only literates can exercise their franchise. This is a critical time when AIWC must make the big effort through our local committees, subcommittees, village taluk level meetings, and publicity to remove the curse of illiteracy. These resolutions were sent to the government, to the British government, and also to all the governments in the states for taking action on these. Our message to the public, that we've already said. Now the AWC gives a suggestion for the new Constitution of India, which was then being drafted by the British government, who had constituted an all parties committee. And this is not the constitution which we now have in free India. In this constitution, India was still a subject country of the British imperial regime, but we had some federal powers, we had our legislatures, we had our institutions. It was a sort of loose kind of a federation, with the overall power with the British government. Of course, later on this changed, we became fully independent. So for this constitution, AIWC demanded that the constitution must guarantee that the government must protect the fundamental right of every child in the country to have free education, compulsory medical checkup, and free treatment. One of the very interesting resolutions was to select 8 backward districts in the respective areas. अब ये तो हम देखे हैं कि 1952 में जब पंचवर्षीय योजनाएं शुरू की गई थी, तब यही था कि सामूहिक विकास के लिए 55 जिलाओं में ये पंचवर्षीय योजना लागू किया गया था. इसमें सब तरह की सुविधाएं दी गई थी, पढ़ाई लिखाई, मेडिकल हेल्प, और सड़कें बनाई गई, पानी का बंदोबस्त किया गया, इस तरह का ऑलराउंड डेवलपमेंट का था. मगर यहाँ हम देखते हैं कि 20 साल पहले AIWC ने ये सब रेकमेंड करके पूरा प्लान बनाया था पंचवर्षीय योजना का. तो इसमें इसका रेजोल्यूशन भी पास किया था कि डेवलपमेंट प्लान एंटायर कम्युनिटी के लिए बनाए, और जो स्टैंडिंग कमेटी मेंबर्स थे अपने अपने इलाके में जो 8 बैकवर्ड, सबसे जो बैकवर्ड डिस्ट्रिक्ट थे, जो पिछड़े हुए जिले थे, उनके लिए बनाए, और वहां जाके डिस्ट्रिक्ट ऑफिशियल्स के साथ काम करें और सारा उनको मुहैया करें जो जो सुविधाएं चाहिए. मेडिकल सेंटर खोलें, स्कूलें शुरू करें, बहुत इस तरह का पूरा डेवलपमेंट प्लान करें. Lady Quadir had a great deal of faith in the standing committee members to give such a big plan to them. And she said, we are answerable to the people. You must remember that you represent your state, your province, and whatever you're doing, it should be worthwhile. Don't think you can just come here and attend a meeting and go back. You have to work for your people, and this is what you carry back from here. This is the plan which you can take up in the area. We have a target of 5 years, and we can assess it every 6 months or every year. And then wherever we have succeeded, we can note down what we have done. And where we have not succeeded, we do further planning and wait for results. So such a far-sighted plan, the so-called lady who was not educated in the technical sense, but she had that vision, and she had a very capable plan in mind, which probably they started at that time. We don't know how far it went. So then end of the report, the end of the conference, the report in the annual report, we find AIWC Constitution, Articles 1 to 6, with the bylaws and regulations are given at the end of the report. The description of duties of the standing committee members, the bylaws say, the standing committee should administer the affairs of the conference subject to the constitution and any special instructions issued at the annual session. So this was quite a weight put on the shoulders of the standing committee. So these slides we have seen already. Go to the last slide. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, about whose centenary we spoke a little while back. Okay. So this was the group, ladies, the entire group of the 8th session. I don't know which place this is, maybe in front of the town hall. Can't identify the building. Oh, this was a trip they took on a steamer. This was the end of the conference. And they went on a steamer ride. This was a view from Calcutta, from the Hooghly River in the 1930s. I don't know if our friends in Calcutta can identify this place. It says Malik Ghat. The photograph, it says Malik Ghat. Maybe it's just a little before Kali Ghat temple. You can't see the temple. Anyways, the ladies enjoyed the steamer ride and they returned with all these impressive programs, proposal, resolutions in hand. This was a fitting end to an eventful session. Ladies, I seek this opportunity to tell you a little more about the heroine of our program today, Lady Abdul Qadir. After the 30s, she and her husband, as you just heard, were both leaders not only in social reform, but they were also nationalists. राष्ट्रवादी थे, महात्मा गांधी और दूसरे नेता लोग आके इनके यहाँ ठहरते थे जब लाहौर आते थे तो, और इनकी जो सोसाइटी था उनके लोग बहुत सामाजिक काम भी करते थे और राष्ट्र सेवा के लिए भी नारे लगाते थे, लोगों को बताते थे, आंदोलन में भाग लेते थे, सब कुछ करते थे। अब जब देश का विभाजन हुआ 1947 में तो बहुत बुरे दिन आए, लाहौर में मारकाट शुरू हो गई जैसे कई शहरों में हुआ था, और इन्होंने कादरीस ने और उनकी तरह कई लोगों ने मिलके लोगों को बचाया, दंगे फसाद में जाके उनको बचा के ले आए, अपने घर में रखे, और कई महीनों तक इनके घरों में रेफ्यूजी कैंप जैसे खोले गए थे। और सिर्फ ये नहीं, मगर हमारे देश में और भी शहरों में ऐसे लोग थे जिन्होंने आगे आके लोगों को बचाया, इंसानियत को अपना फर्ज समझा और सबसे पहले जाके इनको बचा के सहारा दिया, इनकी देखभाल की और इनको सुरक्षित पहुंचा दिए बॉर्डर के। तो ये सब इनकी कहानी में ये सब साइड स्टोरीज हैं जिनके बारे में हमारे बड़ा अच्छा लगा पढ़ के, बहुत दिलचस्पी हुई देख के कि कैसे कैसे लोग थे जो पूरे देश के लिए पूरे अपने पूरा विश्वास पूरा था उनको देश के प्रति, उनकी इतनी लगन थी। अच्छा, जब पाकिस्तान बन गया तो लेडी कादिर जो इतने काबिल थी, कई कमिटीज में उनको लगाया गया, अध्यक्षा बनी थी महिलाओं के कमेटी में, विकास कमेटी में, और फॉरेन डेलीगेशन भी ले गई थी, और अंत तक वो बहुत एक्टिव रही, काम करती रही, महिलाओं के लिए काम करती रही। तो ये थी 8वीं सेशन के बारे में, और उसकी जो प्रेसिडेंट थी लेडी अब्दुल कादिर या अनवरी बेगम जो उनका असली नाम था। अच्छा, मैं आप सबको थैंक्स कहना चाहती हूँ। मेंबर्स, आप लोगों ने बहुत ध्यान से ये सुना, हमारे साथ यात्रा किए, 90 साल पहले वाली कलकत्ते में चले गए और थोड़ा वहाँ के लोगों, पर्सनालिटीज, इवेंट सबको देखा। आई थैंक यू ऑल। हमारे स्पीकर ने बहुत मेहनत किया है, अभी युतिका ने भी आपको बताया कहाँ कहाँ से ढूंढा और सब कुछ पता लगाया, फिर अपने प्रेजेंटेशंस बनाए, उनको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you. Thank you, Mathili. Thank you so much, Mathili. It was so interesting. You
Very
virtually
nice.
took us there. हाँ, हमें लग रहा था हम वहीं पहुंच गए. Can you just stop presenting this so that we can see each other more? If you can just stop presenting this, we can talk to you. It was so nice. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone was chanted to Calcutta at that time.
Yutika, I want to thank our staff also, Mrs. Pratibha, Pratibha, who has helped to do the PowerPoint and also helped to do all the groundwork for this presentation, and Mrs. Ranjana Gupta and Mrs. Sujata in MCM Library, who have poured for hours together on old books and records to find all the references and photographs. My biggest bouquet of thanks is to President Sheila ji. She not only gave a challenging and interesting task, but she went on giving suggestions and ideas about how to go about the research into these very grand personalities of the past. Thank you so much, Sheila ji.
Thank you. Thank you. Maithili ji, you did a great job. It was very nice seeing Abdul Qadir ji's work during her presidential time.
Thank you.
It was the polished speakers. And,
Yutika ji, your voice is breaking.
एक्चुअली शिवानी का नाम लिया आपने
शिवानी डॉक्टर लक्ष्मी गांधी
voice,
Yutika,
बहुत लोगों ने हेल्प किया
yeah, बताइए शायद.
हेलो चंद्रप्रभा जी
Yutika, please carry on.
शिवानी मैंने सुना था कि आपने बहुत बहुत मदद
Yeah.
की इसलिए
Chandraprabha ji,
Shall we
later on.
हाँ
Shall we have
Chandraprabha,
हम discussion बाद में कर लेंगे. We have to go to the next president. Can we proceed with the program, audience? We have 3 more speakers, and the next upcoming president is Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji. She was the 9th president of AIWC when it was held in the Karachi session. And we have 3 very good speakers, Mrs. Asha Chandra, Dr. Karishma Koka, and Mrs. Farida Hussain. And we are all ears. I would now like to invite our first speaker, Mrs. Asha Chandra. She's also president of Aiwc, and we are happy to have you here, Asha ji. Over to you. You are going to speak about the pioneering work of Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji in the field of women's education and the various institutions set up by her with her initiative. And of course, you are going to share the screen with us. Over to you, Asha ji. Welcome
Thank you
to
so
the
much,
webinar.
Yutika ji. Thank you so much. Dear Sheila ji, AIWC President, AIWC patrons, office bearers and members, and distinguished participants. Thank you, Sheila ji, and your team for commencing this informative series. It's so informative. We come to know about, tracing the history of the AIWC presidents from 1927 till date. It is all the more fascinating because, as you all know, the All India Women's Conference and the All India Women's Education Fund Association share a rich and a very close heritage that continues till today. As even till today, we have AIWC executive members on the board of the IWFA. Ascribed to the famous philosopher George Santayana, who said, "Those who forget history are condemned to repeat it." So I don't think condemn is a very strong term, but I think we ourselves have taken on this opportunity to remember our history and, as the previous speaker said, to learn from the grit and determination and ambition of these founders to do great work. And thank you, AIWC, Sheila ji and team for inviting me to share information on Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, 1872 to 1956. She held various positions during her life. President of AIWC, the first founding president of the All India Women's Education Fund Association, and then its president, the governing body member, and later as administrator of the Lady Irwin College. She was active till her death at the age of 84 years, as documents reveal that she inaugurated the College Hall of Residence, probably this was in 1954. As you can deduce from her name, she was a Parsi by birth, a fervent educationist, as Yutika ji said, and also a political activist. When she signed her name as Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji. She spelt it as Faridoonji. However, sometimes people spell her name as Ferdoonji. But I guess these are the, well, vagaries of nature. And for some reason, there is very little material available on her life, on her personality, her residence, her family. But from all written accounts that are available with us, she was the real mover and shaker and the points person who devoted her whole life to our institutions and the advancement of women's education. So I will be speaking about this aspect of her life, and I will later be telling you also from where I got all the information. So I'll just share my screen and the PowerPoint. Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, President, Honorary Secretary, Executive Member, Governing Body Member, and College Administrator. This picture is taken from the college annual report that is released on the College Founders Day every year. So this is one, a different picture that we have of her. This again is from the college report. And as you can see, there are patrons and we have office bearers, and Hilla Faridoonji's name is the first. And then we have the first governing body of the college. On the right-hand side, you will see the eminent visitors to the college. Well, there were several, Mahatma Gandhi, the Queen Elizabeth, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Radhakrishnan, a whole lot of luminaries. Okay, this is where I got all my information from. These are the minutes written from 1929 to 1931. This was the All India Women's Education Fund Association minute book. And for some reason, it was called the Lady Dorothy Irwin's Diary. In the second picture, you can see the thickness of the executive minutes that are available with us. And the last picture on the right-hand side, you can see how big the book is. After this, after I share this, I will share a complete picture of the minutes book with you. And most of my information is derived from these voluminous minutes that were written sometimes under her presidentship and sometimes under the presidentship of the next vice dean, Lady, I think that was Lady Willingdon. And for some curious reasons, like I said, this is called the Lady Dorothy Irwin's Diaries. We come to the first minutes that were written on the 7th of May, 1929. According to these first minutes, the meeting was held at the Vice Regal Lodge on Tuesday, 7th May at 11 a.m. The Honorary Secretary, Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, writes, it was decided to ask the Lahore School of Art, if you see at the bottom of the page, it was decided to ask the Lahore School of Art to design the seal. It is in these minutes only that she signed her name. On the left is her signature. And on the right-hand side, it is Lady Mittar. So it is written, point number 7, Mrs. Rustomji was empowered to arrange for a clerk for typing and to get the circular letter for the membership printed. Of typists, clerks, and stationery. This really took up a lot of time because this was, as you know, the inception of, the work for the college. So the expenditure was very meticulously maintained. The honorary secretary was asked to engage a shorthand typist or clerk and not pay more than 80 rupees a month, and 150 rupees were allowed for stationery. And she was also authorized to purchase a suitable typewriter. Very mundane things that we do even today. She was, if you see in the previous slide, okay, it's not given here, but she was asked, she was given 50 rupees to get the organization registered. And if you see over here, the cost of the registration is written 50 rupees somewhere. This was the seal that was finally approved. It is recorded by Lady Dorothy Irwin on Saturday, 15th February 1930, that new designs for a seal from Lucknow were inspected and the honorary secretary was requested to write and have a slight change made in the selected one. We haven't been able to find out what is the slight change. So as you recall, this was a design that was supposed to be universal. So I think the center is the lamp of learning, and then you have Education Fund Association written around it. Financial sanctions were a big deal, as they are even today. And the honorary secretary was asked to get all the printing for the election of the governing body and the rules and regulations of the organization, to get them printed at a cost not more than 900 rupees. At that time, it was a princely sum. And if you see in point number 4, the registration charges amounting to 50 rupees was sanctioned. That is the certificate that I had shown you earlier. And then there were bank investments. Although they had collected money, but they needed more money all the time. And so instead of allowing it to lie dormant in the accounts, the honorary secretary was, the executive committee approved the action taken by the honorary secretary in investing the new government loan, a sum of rupees 55,000 out of the money collected, as agreed in consultation between the president and the honorary secretary on June 28, 1929. So there were always, the fiscal prudence was always there, always wanting to make more money so that more money could be raised for the construction of the college. Even when we get a house made today, whatever we envisage, it ends up much, much, much more than our estimated costs. So the same thing at that time, with such a huge building, it would have definitely cost more. This is the government house, Fort Bombay. It recalls the pictures just shown by Maithili ji of the Calcutta, old Calcutta. This is the government house at Bombay, and it was the meeting place for the provisional governing body on the 17th of January, 1930. This is a lithograph which I got online, and I don't know what it looks like today. I think we should have a before and after picture too. Resolutions, objectives for opening the college. As you know, this was the aims and objectives for opening such a huge organization would definitely have taken up a lot of time. So 2 resolutions had come. One was from AIWC and one was from a Ms. Young. It was recommended that the committee be appointed to draw up plans for the establishment of a teachers training college of a specialized home science character, covering the complete life of a pupil, whether urban or rural. Both these resolutions were adopted, as it was felt that they were very similar in nature. And Dr. Dorothy Irwin was in the chair, and Hilla was she was the implementer. And both AIWC and Miss Young were asked as to which resolution should go before. And Miss Young agreed that the AIWC resolution could go before hers and hers could come number 2. But both were similar in nature, so both were adopted in 1930. As you can see at the bottom, Dorothy Irwin has signed on February 15th, 1930. So this was a very important meeting at that time. From all this, we can see that from the registration of the association to raising funds and financial investments, from writing to American universities for home science syllabus and courses, and also finding out who, if any, were any Indians of that time who had passed out from those institutions, who could be approached to head the institution, to interviewing the directress and the faculty, and overseeing the college seal, as you have noticed earlier, that was made in Lucknow. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji was at the center of everything. She was a phenomenal driving force whose skills were appreciated by the committee, and whichever position she was in, she was time and again, she was called upon to execute the work, and she came out with full points and full marks. Concise, work-oriented, level-headed, a go-getter, and a very diplomatic negotiator. She was a keen interpreter of the clauses of the Constitution. She was equally at ease recommending efficient clerks and typists, or painstakingly researching and hiring the best faculty while keeping a very prudent eye on the expenditure. In fact, in one case, there's a story is mentioned over there in the minutes where she has asked somebody who had a servant. They said, "You can work with us, and your servant can also double up as a peon as you're already paying his salary." So she was always, thinking on her feet as to how one could save costs. This slide is about her fiscal prudence. The minutes mention an incident where the secretary brought to the notice of the committee that, realizing the condition of our finances, she had retrenched by having temporary typists and so saved 975 rupees on pay and traveling allowance. Nor had she taken any traveling allowance herself. That had been budgeted last year, and she had saved 1,562 rupees out of the 3,400 that were allotted to her. So you can see she has her feet firmly planted on the ground. The meetings could take place anywhere, in palaces or lodges or with the viceroy's wife, but she had a finger on the pulse of the financial pulse of the organization. She was very cautious in fiscal matters. She was a passionate fundraiser, as I mentioned. She was constantly calling upon and writing to the viceroys and vicereins, nawabs and begums, rajas and ranis, lords and ladies, and in independent India, to presidents, the prime minister, the ministers, the bureaucrats, for funds or for facilitation in the furthering of the work of the association and the construction and administration of the college. This is the Viceregal Lodge, Simla. The meetings, like I said, were conducted in different cities of undivided India, sometimes at the most iconic and opulent of buildings and residences, like this Viceregal Lodge in Simla. Meetings were often held at the Viceroy's residence in Delhi that had been commissioned in 1929 itself. And this was considered to be even more lavish than the Buckingham Palace and bigger than the palace at Versailles in France. So you can see that, they held meetings everywhere, but the level-headedness was always visible. At other meetings, some were held at residences, the Red Cross building in Delhi, or in Mrs. Rustom Faridoonji's room at the Cecil Hotel in Simla. Please note, low daily, weekly rates, 700 rooms. Knowing her, she would definitely have taken the lowest rates that were available at the Cecil Hotel at that time. This part gives a look at the diplomatic Hilla Faridoonji, a stickler for the rule of law, There are several instances of her raising technical points while the constitution was being drafted. In one such incident, there was some misunderstanding or some confusion. The Nawab of Hyderabad, who had been asked to recommend one representative to be on the governing body, recommended several names. So what does everybody do? Because he was also one of the founding members and a big funder also. So it was the honorary secretary who was instructed to send the following telegram, where only one your wire, some misunderstanding existing, stop. Only one representative from Hyderabad eligible for governing body. Please see previous correspondence. Stop. Lady Haidari informed of meetings and is coming. So very diplomatically, she pushed in the name that was already there without creating any kind of ruffles or any kind of further misunderstanding. Aiwc's presidents, honorary secretaries, and treasurers. Presidents, you can see the first three vice regents: Lady Dorothy Irwin, Lady Marie Willingdon, Lady Doreen Linlithgow, and the fourth one is Mrs. Rustomji Faridoonji. It is no surprise that she became the fourth, because she was, like I said, the one behind all the work that was being done. Then secretaries, she leads Mrs. Rustomji Faridoonji. She was the first secretary, founding secretary. And of course, then we have the treasurers. You can see the importance of Hilla, Rustomji Faridoonji. Through a constant presence at all the meetings of the association, the governing council, administration, and faculty meetings, she provided invaluable linkages, and we can safely assume that it may have been her ideas and forward thinking that the three viceroys adopted, and they were also the first three presidents of Aiwc. And she followed them as the fourth, like I said, followed again after her by Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. Through these minutes, I think a very clear picture of her personality is emerging. It is mentioned in the minutes that several names were suggested for the college: Technical Institute, Training Institution, and then finally somebody suggested that please let us name the institution after Lady Irwin, and we just call it the Lady Irwin College of Home Science. And if you see below, you cannot read, but below it is written Vidya Hi Seva. Sorry, Shiksha Hi Seva or Vidya Hi Seva. And this was suggested by Mahatma Gandhi. This was the motto that was suggested by him. And this is the minutes provide a very vivid picture of the meticulous planning that went into the inauguration of the college. She was the guiding spirit behind the grand opening of the college on the 11th day of the 11th month of 1932, when 11 girls from 9 states at 11 Barakamba Road greeted the guests. The college was not fully ready, so this is a later picture, and initially they were in rented accommodation at 11 Barakamba Road. I think this shows the foresight that they didn't wait for the college building to be completed before inviting students to join into the college, because by the time the college would have started, they already would have had several girls and maybe some alumni also. This is the College Hall of Residence. She inaugurated the college hostel accommodation in her role as the president of the Aiwc, and in appreciation of Hilla Faridoonji's unflagging spirit and untiring efforts, the Lady Irwin College main hall of residence is named after her. If you can just read the plaque over there, Hilla Faridoonji Hall. So, memory etched in stone: Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, 1872 to 1956. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Asha ji.
thank you. Thank you very much,
You
Asha
took
ji.
us, you took us down the memory lane, through those visuals.
Yes.
We were transported there, and you showed us the minutes. See, I mean, the way you handled history is so professional, and you very rightly you said, very rightly,
I
in the
must
words
show
of
you.
George Santana.
I
Yeah, it
must
was
show you. I must show you. These are the minutes.
Oh, you have.
Can you see?
No,
These are this
not
no.
no,
Not
no.
very clear. Not very
I
clear.
think you have a background. That's why it's blurred. There is a background.
Yeah,
But
maybe
you
because of
started
that. Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Oh, you
this
have.
it's
Oh,
this
that's
big.
so big.
It's this big, and but of course this is the photocopy. The original is in the college, so it is kept under.
Okay.
It was wonderful
photo.
seeing the minutes, we could read it and it was really nice.
Yeah, we could read it in your slides. Yeah.
Yes.
It was
In
amazing.
fact,
Thank you so much, Asha ji.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
You have done so
Lot of
much
efforts.
research.
Yes,
Yeah.
lot of efforts has been put in to make these slides, definitely by your staff members.
No, myself.
Very good.
Because comment is there.
Good.
So thank you so much. And information was also received from Dr. Sidhu, Dr. Renu Malviya, and Dr. Simi Bhagat. So thank you for everything.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. The whole journey of your college we could see. And the best part, Asha ji, was, I mean, I can't resist saying this because we could identify with the problems. Today also we have the same things, happening. Funds and who will
That's
do
why I
what.
picked and chose.
Yes. That was very nice. Thank you so much. Mathili, are you going to show? Because we have a next speaker. Can you? Mathili, are you presenting? No. So we have our next speaker of the day, Dr. Karishma Koka. She's connected with us from London. So I would request Dr. Karishma to kindly come forward. Dr. Karishma, can you hear me?
Unmute. Can you hear me now? Good morning. Namaste.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be with you. Maithili ji, if you can allow me to share and regulate my slides, or how do you want to do it? That may be best. And in case it doesn't work, then you take over. Is that okay? So I'm going to start screen sharing now. I'm here with my mummy, Jaru, and I always say to people, we always stand on the shoulders of great giants in order to reach the skies. So I've been very fortunate to be encouraged in my education and indeed in everything I want to do by my parents, Commander and Mrs. Ram Mohan, and more recently, through everybody I have come across, and many of them are here on this session with us today. My gratitude to, let me just try and start a slideshow. My gratitude to...
Yeah? करा है मैंने.
Sheila ji, you can mute yourself. Sheila ji, please.
Right. Namaste. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. I've been invited today very kindly to present a little information on Hilla, Rustomji, Faridoonji. I express my gratitude to Dr. Shernaaz Kama for thinking of me and giving me this opportunity, and to the All India Women's Congress for allowing me to present today. I always say we stand on the shoulders of great people in order to reach the skies. And I've been very fortunate to be encouraged by my parents, Commander and Mrs. Ram Mohan. Mummy is with me here today. and more recently by many, many people who are here on this call today. People like Dr. Shehnaz Kama, Jahangir Sarosh, Mr. Rusi Dalal of the ZTFE, and many more. In Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, I see a lady who sought to serve unconditionally, and in her own words, with a reverence for learning and a devotion to great principles. And her goal, in her own words, was to bring a greater humanitarian ideal into this world. In her, I see an expression of the universal and the Zoroastrian or Parsi tenet, service before self. Now, my passion is education to empower all and bringing people and organizations together for the good of all. Together with my mummy, I've established the Ultimate Achievements Academy. I'm a member of the Zoroastrian Faculty Network, which has encouraged me enormously, and the Zoroastrian Trust Funds for Europe. Dr. Maithili Jagannathan and Mrs. Shehnaz Kama have been very kind, but also Mrs. Mata Virani of Parzor has supported, and her sister, Mrs. Sharon Irani, has given me some research material, which I will share with you. Mr. Yazdi Tantra shared information on Zoroastrians.net, and Mr. Malcolm Debu of the Zoroastrian Trust Fund for Europe has shared information. Let's start with the initial information shared by Mrs. Rekha Sali, the member in charge of the Constitution AIWC, through Mr. Yazdi Tantra. It says Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, born in 1972, was an educationist and political activist, and as we've heard today, the secretary of the Women's Education Fund Association. She was institutional in working towards removal of caste distinctions together with other people and the abolition of separate schools for different religious sects. We know she was president of the IWC and one of the first administrators of the Lady Irwin College. And हमारे जितने भी speakers हैं, बहुत सुंदरता से उनकी story को बयां किया है. I'm going to take you through the Waipa Post, Te Awamu to New Zealand's printing of 1935, which referenced the AIWC's presidential address. This was also shared in other places, including the good old Karachi Post and the Evening Star. In this, it says, the women of India have suffered in silence for generations. These are the presidential word address of Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji. I won't read it out in detail, but I will highlight the fact that she says, the time has come for us to take our God-granted position in society, and as citizens of this great land, share equally with men in welfare work. To enter legislature, to help make laws, to bring a greater humanitarian ideal into the world. She also says to not let ourselves get into grooves of provincialism, but always take a wider outlook. And then she nails it. She says, with a reverence for learning and a devotion to great principles, let us build, surely, even if it is slowly. So her words tell me that she wanted women to have a say, yes, but for what reason? To work for welfare. Why did she want them to enter legislature? To bring a greater humanitarian ideal into the world. And what was her driving force? To build for us today so that we can enjoy, to build for the world. And she had great reverence for learning and devotion to great principles. Annotate shared content. Kalpakam has, Gechukuri has requested, I will approve. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I think it'll allow me to circle. So this lady here is Dr. Hilla, is Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji. And this is in 1938 at the All India Women's Conference. Now it won't let me. Let me just try and do this so that let me share the screen. Right. So that was the year my mummy was born, 1938. Today, we are standing on this great lady's shoulders, but also the teams that she worked with. Let's now go to 2018. The Zoroastrian All-Party Parliamentary Group, highlighted in the speech by Dr. Sumita Mukherjee at the House of Lords in London on 12th of September, where she was mentioned among the great Indian suffragettes. And a detailed report was presented, written by the coordinator Shazneen Munshi. And I highlight the words used over here, where it says that it shaped British social history and politics, and it contributed to the world and to India. So thank you to Malcolm Debu for sharing this with me of the ZTFE. I have borrowed this beautiful portrait of Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji. I will call her Mrs. Faridoonji sometimes, and sometimes I'll take the liberty of calling her Hilla, so we can get to know her as a person. I borrowed this picture from your PowerPoint, from your advertisement for today's speech. It says, Margaret Cousins says in her book, Indian Womanhood in 1941, published by Kitabistan, which I found online, one of the most impressive personalities among the leaders of Indian womanhood, tall, handsome, dignified, graceful, decorative, blessed with a beautiful, strong contralto voice, which she used with emotional effect. Mrs. Faridoonji has been a well-known Parsi figure in society, and in later years has been a dynamic secretary of the All India Women's Education Fund Association and chief worker for the establishment of the Lady Irwin College. Then she goes on to say, in her chapter on vignettes of the Indian women leaders, her artistic nature and spiritual vision impressed themselves on her many schemes for helping women and girls. And I bring you to the great words of somebody, which my mummy keeps reminding me of: educate a girl or a woman, you educate a family and a society. But it does take teams, it does take families to do this. It takes groups of people to do this. Margaret Cousins then goes on to say, Hilla Rustomji wrote that many political resolutions had nothing to do with educational and social matters, and that the AIWC is supposed to represent all women, not just supposed to take part in party politics. So this is on page 60 of her book. I bring you now to a brief introduction to her work, where I found that she has represented at the Reforms Enquiry Committee in 1924, which was at Simla. She has also represented at the Committee for the Reorganization of Education in the Hyderabad state, the report by A.H. McKinsey and Fazi Mohammad Khan on page 79, along with Miss Webster and Miss Clow. Now, what were the questions that the committee asked them to represent upon? Whether it is to the extent to which there should be differentiation in the curriculum, especially at school stage, in order to adapt it to the needs of those who seek a cultural education, but not to go to university. And she presented oral evidence. I'm also grateful to Sharon Irani, sister of Mahtab Irani of Parzor, for some of the initial work that she did to help me get going with this presentation. And I will share this with you later on. Today, we are in a world that we say we need equity of opportunity. But think back. Let us send our thoughts back to a time where people received education based on differences in their background, or received no education at all. Or if we were women, deprived education based on our background, or educated at home. So in this report, My Reminiscences, Social Development During a Gandhian Era and After by Renuka Ray in 1903, which was published in 1982, it says, Rustomji Faridoonji from Hyderabad, with her striking figure, silvery hair, commanded great respect.
And they were all names to conjure with. And it was Hilla, Rustomji, Faridoonji, whose untiring endeavor built the Lady Irwin College for Domestic Science, together with the help of Rani Lakshmi Bai Raiwade, a medical doctor, and many others, of course. In the oral evidence published in Delhi, the Northwest Frontier Province, in 1932, the signatories included Mrs. Rustomji Faridoonji, who was at that time the vice president of the AIWC. And of course, it was many people who worked for all this. But what did they submit? It's quoted. "We submit, therefore, that adult franchise immediately applied without special expedients constitutes the only way by which the men and the women of India can possibly come into their own." So we know they worked for adult vote, the franchise. Now, Dr. Karma, Sharnas Karma I'm very grateful to her because she's contacted several people to help with information. Mr. Dinyar Patel knows of somebody who's currently writing a biography. I'm not privileged with the name. And he has referenced Kamladevi Chattopadhyay's work and the work by Reena Nanda. Now, what I'll bring you to is the report of the University Education Committee. So now we know that Hillaji worked for the franchise, the voting system, for both men and women. But it's also that this lady contributed to the University Education Commission. And on page 24, a little bit we get a glimpse, just a little glimpse is thrown upon her own self. In this, it says she was born in October 1871. In another place, we know it was recorded as 1872. She's a Parsi. She went to a Parsi girls' school in Fort Bombay, the Frere School. And it also says on page 133, the bottom right-hand side, that she went to Frere Fletcher School and she visited America and Europe in 1893. She went to England in 1921 to 22. So this may be why some of her work is found at the London School of Economics, an extremely prestigious organization internationally. Now, on page 1058 of the University Education Commission, it says that Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji is either said to have said or written that in the present condition of India, conscription to social service is absolutely necessary, and that adult education can even be planned during the vacation time under proper guidance of adult and enthusiastic young teachers. So she seems to have wanted to find solutions. So now I'm seeing her through her work as a person who wanted education for all, a person who wanted the franchise for all, and a person who wanted to find solutions. Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, the first Prime Minister of India, has written in his book, Selected Works of Jawaharlal Nehru, which was published in 1984 by Hind Swaraj, on page 73 and 74, titled Mrs. Rustomji, Faridoonji and Friends. Always at such functions, there's an initial and primary difficulty about the language one should use. And sometimes that difficulty is got over by a bilingual effect. Well, Mrs. Rustomji tells me that I can have my choice, but she would somewhat prefer me speaking in English. I would somewhat prefer speaking in Hindi, so in balance, perhaps, you might have a little of both. Now, to put this into context, I didn't understand this till I reflected upon a story my mother had told me when Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India in 1969-ish, I think it was, visited Bangalore and started speaking in Hindi on the dais. People picked up stones and started throwing at her. People picked up whatever they could and started throwing. So my mother, Mrs. Ram Mohan, at that time, Miss Jaru Pantiki, told her, Miss Indira Gandhi, please speak in English because Hindi is not yet well accepted in Karnataka. This is Bangalore. The moment she started speaking in English, people started listening with their hearts, applauding. So to put things into context, we need to be able to relate to the times. Are you able to still see my screen? Because I think we are viewing Miss
So I
Kalpam
think,
Square.
yeah. Can I request Mrs.
Yeah,
Yechuri?
it looks
Please
blank
stop.
actually.
No, Mrs. Yechuri is presenting. We can
Oh.
see Mrs.
No, I
Yechuri's.
think by mistake, Yachuriji must have put a
Is
finger.
it okay
Yeah,
now?
now it's okay.
Yeah, now it's
Now
fine.
Go ahead, yeah, please.
So now we can see that even Jawaharlal Nehru listened to the wise counsel of Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji. I now take you to the bill at the Rathbone Papers, which are in the London School of Economics, where it is stated that in the 1935 AIWC conference address, where Hillaji was president, she says, women in India in one way have been more fortunate than their Western sisters. Note her words. We have no suffragette question, and we want no sex war. The scope of our activities is not limited, and we should show by real work for the welfare of others that we are ready for equality of status we deserve. She then goes on to say that, noting 8 years ago, we followed up on our previous year's decision by a resolution deploring the effect of early marriages. So now this is the third main thing she brings up. Why deplore early marriages? Because it, as she says, deploring the effect of early marriages on women's education and demanding that the age of consent be raised to 16. A deputation was then sent to His Excellency the Viceroy to urge the desirability of appointing a committee to inquire into the problem of child marriages. A committee was appointed, and on its recommendation, the Child Marriage Restraint Act, better known as the Sarda Act, was passed. Now, things are not without the need for further research, and that is my main aim. I have two main aims today. One is to bring up the work of this great lady, and the second to request you all out there to do further research. Because it says here, there's a little note, Faridoonji claimed full ownership of the work done to influence the government, despite the significant efforts by British women to influence the government regarding child marriage. So this is a point of view. There may be many other points of view. And from reading the work, I think she was a great, strong team player, actually. So today we are used to seeing children in groups of all races, nationalities, backgrounds, studying together. This was not the case in the olden days. And I bring you to the book by Mrinalini Sinha now, Spectres of Mother India, The Global Restructuring of an Empire, in which Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji is mentioned three times. One, where it states that Colonel Harvey, the private secretary of Lady Irwin, persuaded Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, a member of the standing committee at that time, to accord the Viceroy's wife a prominent role in the draft constitution in lieu of the use of an educational fund. Now, we know from our previous speaker that she was a meticulous person who would have followed not just the directions to the letter, but probably in spirit, even when it was not particularly written out. So the majority of the Standing Committee rejected the proposal as severely limiting for the conference's newly expanded social reform agenda. According to Mehta, Hansa Mehtaji's, Faridoonji had displayed a fundamental misconception, or at least a misapprehension, of the nature of the organization for which the constitution was being drafted. And she argued against subordinating the conference to the needs of managing an educational fund. She wanted the conference to be big, to be able to be influencing based on the thought process. So from this, I see a thought leader who was not shy of putting her views forward and then discussing it with others. But again, this is one or two people's point of view. It needs to be researched further. She also sponsored a resolution, it says on page 243, for the removal of special schools for different religions and denominations and castes, as well as the removal of caste distinctions in application forms for admission to educational institutions. People were required to say who they were, what their background was, and then they would be given or not given things. So not given admission based on merit. Today, we take it for granted that we will get admission to places based on merit, or as we say, equity of opportunity. In the biography of Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay by Jamila Brijbhushan, which was what Mr. Dinyar Patel had informed Dr. Shehnaz Kama about to inform me of, it says that Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, as secretary at the time of Lady Irwin College, proved to be a most devoted and hard-working executive. And the committee, having set up the Home Economics Institute, she made it her life's work and labored with complete dedication to make this dream a reality. Of course, it was a bold adventure, as it says, for an organization just finding its feet. And they did not at that time have properly trained personnel, according to this writer. But taking courage in both hands, the sponsors went ahead and set up the institution, the Lady Irwin College for Home Economics, the first of its kind, and only one foreign expert from New Zealand was called in to help. They did this on their own as a team. We also know that in 1932, Lady Hilla contributed to the Indian Franchise Committee report. And her words at that time were supposed to have said that every effort should be made to enlist voluntary service. So she wanted people to come with her. Now, on page 1145, there is something that not shines a light, but throws a lot of light on her thought process. Generally very satisfactory in mission colleges, but not so in others, is what is said, that education was satisfactory in mission colleges. And she says, the difference is not to the generally prevalent wrong notion that mission colleges have unlimited funds, but to the fact that they set a high value on these aspects of education. So success of a college is not just due to the funding available, but to the value placed on the education aspects. She also wanted people to express their view, and on the joint conference of the International Council of Women, on page 47, I found a reference saying that if women took this up and expressed their view, much could be done. So she wanted people to express their view. Now, what this is, I couldn't find out. I assume it's something to do with education, because the next point says something about the medical inspection of schools. Now let's just get to know the little Hilla. So I'm very grateful to Sharon Irani, the sister of Mata Birani of Parzor, who was introduced to me by Dr. Shehnaz Kama, who brought up this article originally. I subsequently found that this was in the magazine Truth in 1899. So she was born in 1872. This was the 1899 magazine of Truth, volume 45 on page 100, where it refers to a doll beautifully addressed. So it says, thanks to the kindness of Miss Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, a very nice doll was received from Akola, Berar, dressed with great taste in the attire of a Parsi bride. And this doll naturally attracted much attention. So Sharon actually picked up beautifully that this places Hillaji in Akola, Berar, which was a British administered province, later belonged to the Hyderabad state, and as Sharon says, now part of Maharashtra state, in 1899. Then Sharon picked up very kindly the book by James Henry Cousins and Margaret Cousins of 1950, where on page 758, the book is titled We Two Together, and it tells us the story of this husband-wife team. And they write, from Kalimpong, we went to Hyderabad in Deccan for a 3-week stay with our cordial friends, the Nawab and Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji, in their palatial home on the outskirts of the great city, in light of the famous old fort of Golconda, which privately we did not like for its bare ugliness. But that does tell us, as Sharon points out, that they had a beautiful palatial home just outside Hyderabad, within view of the Golconda fort. Sharon then picked up kindly the information about both of them being silver medalists of the Kesar-e-Hind, both Hillaji and her husband, Rustomji Faridoonji, who was in the civil service. And the conclusion drawn from Sharon's observation is that we know her family was based in Seoni, central India from at least 1901 to 1916, as the dates of awarding the Kaisar-e-Hind medal differ in year, but the location remains the same. So I pulled up another article which was published in 1914. So there's a little description, discrepancy, thank you, Mami. A little discrepancy in the years of the publication, and I particularly want to point that out, which in 14 says Rustomji Faridoonji UCS was in Raipur, and Mrs. Hilla Rustomji also Raipur. So when it was published in 1916, it says Seoni. When it was published in 1914, it says Raipur. Now, Raipur and Seoni are both today in Chhattisgarh, the district of the state of Chhattisgarh, about 700 kilometers apart. So they're in the same area. This gentleman who formed part of this husband-wife team was called Nawab Rustom Jung Bahadur. Now, in the 1937 publication of the list of leading officials, nobles, and personages of Hyderabad state, he is referred to in great detail. He was born on the 24th of May, 1869, was part of the Hyderabad civil service, retired in 1924 as officiating commissioner in the government of the central provinces in December 1924. He was appointed customs commissioner. He was secretary to the government of the revenue department and was awarded the Kaisar-e-Hind medal in 1901, something that his wife achieved in 1914 or 1916. And he received the title of Rustom Jung from the Nizam. Interesting fact I found out through reading that the report of the administration of His Royal Highness the Nizam's dominions for the year 1336 Fasli, so Hyderabad used the Parsi calendar at that time, says that the customs commissioner up to the 29th Baman Roj 1336 Fasli was succeeded by Mr. Rustomji Faridoonji. At that time, he may not have had the title of Nawab, so he was referred to as Mr. Now let's come back before we close to the great lady herself, who formed part of this wonderful husband-wife team, but stood grandly on her own too. In the book by Jamila Brijbhushan, published in 1976 on Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, the great lady herself, in the chapter Indian Womanhood Today, it says, one of the most impressive personalities amongst the leaders of Indian womanhood, tall, handsome, dignified, graceful, decorative. Mrs. Faridoonji has been a well-known Parsi figure in society and in later years, the dynamic secretary of the All India Women's Education Fund. So in conclusion, the role of Mrs. Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji as an intellectual and a social entrepreneur who worked with different teams with knock-on effects on the economy of the country and the world, and who portrayed the ideal of service before self. And as I see it, if there is a funnel through which education or intellectual entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, followed by economic entrepreneurship funnels through to empower people to learn and build together as she wanted. If education gets stuck in that funnel, social and economic entrepreneurship may not be able to come through. So this lady brought us intellectual entrepreneurship, overlapping with social entrepreneurship, overlapping with follow-through economic entrepreneurship, because an educated society and an empowered society is a society, a country, and a world that can build a legacy that today people like me enjoy. So thank you very much for this opportunity, all of you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for recording it for the future. I'll stop screen sharing now and hand over.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Cook. That was amazing. I just felt that we were in a history webinar, the way you have used the sources and the meticulously used, sources at the right places to illustrate this great lady is amazing. And, I believe you are neuroscience. You were written. You are from the science background.
Yes, I'm a neuroscientist. I have a PhD from the University of Cambridge, a master's from the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Bangalore, and a background in environmental science for my first degree, but all thanks to my parents. My mummy's here, Jaru, and also the great people great teachers I've had, the great encouragement I've had from my seniors, people like Rusi Dalal, Jangir Sarosh, or on this call, Dr. Karma. It's thanks to all of these great people, people like you here today. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Karishma ji. Thank you. And I thank Dr.
There's some echo. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to thank Dr. Sharnaz Kama also for joining here. She has been instrumental in supplying material to. Yes.
Namaskar, Kamaji.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Move on. Yeah.
Okay. And I'd like to greet Koka's mother also. She's there. Please convey our greetings to your mom. Namaskar. It was an amazing presentation, and that's what I was asking. I have heard that scientists are good historians. So you keep up the good work. And because they do the work like experimenting, very meticulously. So I hope you continue with this and we get another thing I wanted to remark. You have quoted Dr. Sumita Mukherjee's book, Indian Suffragettes. She had come to our library. This is for the information of the gathering also. Yeah. And so many of these you have quoted, some of them I can recollect. They have been visiting our library for their work. And she came to us in 2018 and she was writing this book. And we invited her to give her, we have a book club in the library. So nowadays it's a little in a state of suspension because of this virtual thing. But then she said, okay, whenever she comes next. So I think she didn't come after that, but it was good to have her. Yeah, she was
Thank
there.
you so much, Yutika ji. Thank you for anchoring this program so well. And my deepest gratitude to Dr. Sharnaz Kama for placing her trust in me to give me this opportunity today.
Yeah, we thank her equally. I can see you quoted her so frequently. And if you ever happen to be in Delhi, just maybe in future, do drop into the AIWC. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we'll move on with the program. Our next speaker for today is Mrs. Farida Hussain, the trustee of All India Women's Education Trust. And she's also the president of All India Women's Conference, Hyderabad. Over to you, Farida ji. Her subject is, she'll be presenting a profile of Hilla, Rustomji, Faridoonji, and her presidentship of AIWC's annual session at Karachi. I would request Mrs. Farida ji, please continue. Over to you. Farida ji. Farida ji, you have to unmute yourself. Please unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Fine. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity of speaking about Hilla Rustomji. But already I think there is everything has been covered, so mine will be superfluous actually, because my previous speaker has done a wonderful job. She has given exhaustive report on all the activities, all the facets of her personality. So there's not much because when I started asking about information about Hilla Faridoonji, so they said that no, we don't know anybody of that name. I went to so many Parsi ladies and gentlemen and Zoroastrian club and Agyari and whatnot. So later on, I came to know in Hyderabad, they know her only as Begum Rustomji. So they didn't know anything about Hilla as such. They were saying that Begum Rustomji. So when I found out how, since it has been covered so extensively by the previous speakers, I'd like to focus on her being a Parsi and how the Nizams and the Parsis got along in Hyderabad, how the Parsis came as refugees when there was a revolution in Persia, when they were driven out of Persia. And Salar Jung, the first, was the first person who invited the Parsis to come to Hyderabad, and they were given refuge here, and they were given good posts. They had a advantage of knowing English, Persian, and Urdu, sort of. And these linguistic accomplishments of the Parsis gave them a foothold in the Hyderabad milieu of society, actually, because they were promoted to very high positions in a very short time, even though they were refugees from Persia. And there are a lot of instances where Parsis have contributed to the life of Hyderabad. And you see, they are told like they are like sugar and salt. Sugar is, if you mix in the milk, the milk becomes sweet, and they are supposed to be bringing sweetness to the world. And in the same way, they are also told that we are like salt, because even though we are very less in numbers, very, very few in numbers, but even the small quantity of salt will give the taste to the um, curry or wherever you are put. So they are like people who can mingle with the local culture, local customs, and still give and contribute flavor to the society. So that is how the Parsis are looked at in Hyderabad. They are very welcome in most of the places, and they have contributed a lot to the culture of Hyderabad, because Parsi ghara saris, Parsi patrani machli, or whatever, wherever you see that influence of Parsi in the cuisine, in the culture of Hyderabad is there. Actually, Hyderabad itself is very culturally active, very culturally distinct area, but in that the Parsis have given a flavor to it, and that is appreciated by the community in Hyderabad. And the other thing is that Nizam had patronized many Parsis, and many Parsis have taken up very high positions in the administration of Hyderabad. And our Hilla Rustomji's husband, whom we call Rustomji, he was also given a very high position in the civil service, as previous speaker has already mentioned. And Hilla was very much in the highest of the society. She was a good friend of Princess Nilufar and Princess Dureshahwar, the princess of Berar, and that's where they have gone to also. And together with them, they had started our Hyderabad Women's Association. So Hyderabad Women's Association was started by Hilla Rustomji, and it was supported and encouraged by both Nilufar, Princess Nilufar, and Princess Dureshahwar. So, and all these three ladies were very beautiful. They were recognized beauties of the era. So Nilufar also was considered as one of the most beautiful ladies in the world. So that, you see, they were all, even though they were placed in very high position, They were all very enthusiastic social workers, social activists. They have done a lot. And like when there were floods in Hyderabad, these people went to the Musi River bankment, and all the arrangements were made for the rehabilitation, rescue, and the looking after of the affected families. 1942 was a very bad year for Hyderabad as far as climatic this thing was concerned, and all these three ladies together had done a lot for the Hyderabadi people. And the other thing I'd like to highlight is that Hilla was also responsible for setting up, as she was an educationist and a very enthusiastic educationist at that, our visa, what we call the Women's Association for Social Upliftment. So visa school in Mallepalli, I think Beena Jain, please, you have seen the school, I think, in Hyderabad. That school was started by Hilla Faridoonji. So we are very grateful to her that even though she was outside Hyderabad, she was in Bombay, she was in Delhi, she was in Berar, but still she was quite involved in the education and the social upliftment of the Hyderabad state also. And our school is a monument for her effort at giving education to the disadvantaged, deprived section of society. We still have the school, and it's quite a spacious school, and we have now lighted it with solar lights, and it's all running on solar energy. And with vocational center, because she was also interested in adult education, adult dignity of women, and she was very enthusiastic about giving employment opportunities, skill development to the women also, which she did in Hyderabad. And the other thing I'd like to highlight is that in the AIWC of Hyderabad, she was not a president here, but at the same time, through other Parsi ladies and through other activists, she has been contributing to the functioning of AIWC Hyderabad Secunderabad branch. There is only one branch for both the cities. They are like, they are connected with a tank bund, which is Hussain Sagar. So for both the cities, there is one branch was established, and in establishing that branch, Princess Dure Shahwar, Princess Nilufar, and Hilla Rustomji were responsible for it and for its development. Even now, it is one of the oldest branches of AIWC, established in 1927 itself, when the first conference took place at Pune. After coming back from Pune, we started the AIWC at Hyderabad, which was earlier called the Hyderabad Women's Association. It was turned into AIWC Hyderabad Secunderabad branch. And I'd also would like to give this thing that the plot that was given to the AIWC was donated by the Nizam in 1931, and it was given at 1 rupee per year rent. It was a very nominal rent. It was almost a donation, which we are still keeping it with us under the same terms and conditions. And I'd like to also say, because I have been getting in touch with all her relatives, a lot of them do not know that she was doing this at Hyderabad, but they all know about Lady Irwin College and her contribution at the center. But Hyderabad, this thing, she had actually two daughters. I'd like to, you have not pointed out her personal life. One was Feroza, the other was Roshan. These two, one got married to Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan's son, who was Frontier Gandhi. So she had three children, who one of the child was adopted by the other daughter. So her personal life, her family is now scattered around in the world. I mean, they are in London, they are in Bombay, they are. Both the daughters are not there. I spoke to her niece who is in Bombay, Amy. She is of some help to me. She was of some help. She gave me some of the information about Hilla, and she was saying that her daughter Feroza, she went to Lahore, and her grandchildren are in USA, and I think they are in UK also. And Hilla Rustomji was very fond of playing cards. She was in the evenings. She used to when she was in Delhi, they used to have lot of these card sessions. She had blue eyes, and she preferred to wear blue. And in those days they were having the veil, and she was wearing blue veil, I believe, and she was looking extraordinarily beautiful in those dresses. She was always well dressed, of course, but blue was her favorite color. And she used to be very jovial, and apart from being educationist and all those things, as a person she was very easy to get along with. She was a happy-go-lucky type, and very fond of playing cards and socializing, entertaining people. And they in Hyderabad, when they were here, they were living near, as you said, near Golconda, actually in Toli Chowki, where I am living now. So they had a palatial palace, actually they had, and they were entertaining all the time. And their food was, the food that was served at the dinners were supposed to be superlative. And it was, as it is, Hyderabadi cuisine is very famous world over for biryani and halim and other things. I'm talking on a lighter term because you have actually finished all her other aspects of her life and her actually career. But I am talking only on personal, on a lighter vein. And she was very fond of music. She was and dance, and she used to have beautiful gharas. Ghara sari is very famous for Parsi ladies, which right from their childhood, they teach the ladies how to stitch these embroidery, which is very, very popular. In Hyderabad, actually, we have a Zoroastrian club, and in that, people from Bombay and other areas, they bring their ghara saris and their food items and sell them there. And another thing is that Nizam gave this area, about 6 acres of land for Zoroastrian club. And in that, when in 1930s, there was the break of malaria in Hyderabad. Many people, dozens and dozens, they died. And Ronald Ross, who was a scientist, he wanted a place to do research for malaria, for medicine, this thing. So Parsis gave him the place in their Zoroastrian club, and now Ronald Ross Club is there, a place where he invented the medicine for malaria. In those days, he was giving 4 annas for each mosquito that was brought to him for testing. So that's how they started the process of scientific research on Malarian drugs, and that was done by the Parsis. And there is a lot of other contributions which the Parsis have done, like the Chenois are very famous for their mechanical this thing. They went to, one of them went to London, and he did his mechanical engineering, came back, and he was having a showroom and repair work for Nizam's big fleet of cars. So that was a very famous this thing in Hyderabad, one of the famous Chennai autos. And like that, the Parsis in Hyderabad have contributed a lot for the development of Hyderabad culture, the society. And Hilla Rustomji will be always remembered in Hyderabad for her lavish dinners, her evening parties, and social gatherings, as well as education, which everyone knows about. So her contribution for the women's education was astounding, as has been told by my previous speakers. I don't want to take much of your time. We're all tired, I think, after listening to it's not an envious position to be the last speaker, you know. So I want to, what all the information that was given out, I have already written here, so I don't want to repeat the same thing. But Stree Dharma, which was brought out from Madras, that magazine has lot of information about AIWC activities and Hilla Rustomji's contribution. It was there actually. I would like to read out one passage from there, which is very relevant, and which was, you see, Lady Lytton noted that there was great cooperation between all Indian women, whether Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, or Christians. And this was written, and Indian movement for progress of women was possible because all the women's sections, all the religious sections of Indian womanhood has taken part without any hesitation in this movement. And one of the noteworthy features of the Indian women's movement was the cooperation and unity which existed between women of different communities on issues specific to women, despite the unbridgeable political differences which separated men of their communities. This was written in 1935, and this was actually told by Margaret Cousins in Madras, that this is the cause for the success of women's movement in India, because women from every community had taken part in this women's movement. And I want to end my whatever presentations, very small presentation, because thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I am not a very good speaker, so
No, thank you, Farida. After saying it all, huh? You are saying you're not a good speaker.
I do work more than speak.
We had such great speakers today. Thank you so much. And I think you can't say last but not the least. We have to say that. And last is one of the best.
Thank you so much.
That is. And the best part of your presentation was you talked about the very human aspect of Faridoonji, and the things we wouldn't get in books.
Yeah.
That's the eyewitness sort of
this
thing.
is from the people who have been with her, their grandmothers, their, who are here now.
Actually, this
So,
is the best part of this webinar because we invite people who are, so closely associated to those ladies. They have been there with them or connected to those ladies. So that's the purpose of this seminar, to bring out all aspects of those presidents whom we just know as presidents. But they are not just presidents. They are much more,
this is
many
just
more. Yeah.
a human being, a social
Yes.
figure. That's
Yes.
what
We
I
have
tried
got
to bring out.
we
Yeah.
have got all the aspects of Faridoonji.
Yes.
Now
And
we have
remember,
got.
we began with the note that today we have two presidents about whom we don't know anything, and look at the wealth we have.
Look at the wealth.
tumbling
Yeah.
out, tumbling
Yeah.
out from everywhere.
There's lots more to know about these people. They were great people. And there are a lot of other details also which we can find out.
Yes.
I will be with, now that I have started the contacts with all these people, they are relatives of hers. So nieces and nephews and all these people. So I can get some more
Please,
photos and other things.
yes, we would love to have. This is a
Yutika ji.
request. Yeah, Sheila ji, this is a request to everyone to give us everything and keep this work
Yes.
on. Yeah,
Because
that's what I think.
Shivani ji has also collected lot of information.
Acha. Okay.
Yes, about Faridoonji.
Oh,
Where?
Yes.
oh, we couldn't hear that, so
No,
we
no,
might
she has
have.
given it to Maithili ji.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can have someone to say anything, some comments. I'm sure people are writing. This is one of the best.
And they were also very fond of polo.
Ah.
The polo was very much encouraged in Hyderabad. There are a lot of all these royalties. They were playing polo, especially the women. Even our Gul Chennai was our president, was a very good polo player.
Gulchenai. I met Gulchenai.
Oh.
You remember that in Hyderabad also, and she used to come in the other meetings in AIWC annual meetings also.
Yes. She was a very good polo player. And when Churchill came for the first time as second lieutenant, he was playing polo and in the Secunderabad club, and he was doing something wrong. And immediately there was the British cantonment team and Nizam's team. They were playing together, and they fined him for breaking the rule. Even though the Britishers were the ruling class, but Nizam's team at that time, he is yet to pay 9 rupees as fine to Secunderabad club. Churchill.
Yes. So we have to go to his grave and get. No,
So
the Britishers should pay.
that's the sportsmanship of the people.
Yeah. That's so good to hear. The spirit.
Whether they were rulers or
Yutika ji.
Yes.
Yutika ji, I think Shivani ji wants to say something.
Okay. Yeah, I want to say,
Mehta.
Jutika, can
Hello,
I just 1
Farida.
minute?
How are you?
Farida, you are the
Thank you. Long
After
time.
long time we see you.
Yes, I can't see you still.
God bless you. And Farida, I think there is some for Shahryar. Shahryar Faridoonji is there in Bombay.
Yes.
There is whatever I have got, I send these some photographs. Of her. इनके साथ 3 बहनों का भी फोटो था, उनकी मदर.
अच्छा.
हाँ, ऐसा 3 लेडीज का भी फोटो था, लेकिन कौन वो नाम नहीं लिखा था. Just only one name was there, his wife, his mother, for the Shahryar.
Okay, वो हाँ शहरियार का है नाम मेरे पास. अच्छा, आप भेजिए, मैं I'll identify them.
So
Yutika.
Yeah. Chandraprabha ji. Chandraprabha ji,
I want to say that the best thing about today's meeting was that everyone told about the source from where they got this knowledge. Because we started that there is very little on both the presidents. They were wondering what to say. And now look at the amount of information
Wealth, yeah. It's a wealth.
Karishma has got. Karishma, you should become a researcher in our organization. It was like a research.
Jackpot.
Every date is given, page number is given. Wow, it is amazing. Sheila ji, this was, I'm not diplomatic, this was the best meeting of all the presidents that we have. You know, amazing, amazing.
Don't give up. We are going to have many more such.
Many more. But so
Remain connected. Remain connected.
Yuthika,
This is very
I was
good.
really very little on Quadir and Hilla.
Yeah,
we
true.
were looking all over. Even I was doing it, you know, for my own knowledge. But there was so little. And now look at Karishma. She has brought from pages. Look at Asha Chandra. Gosh, how she found the minutes.
Everyone for that
to
matter.
Get all the speakers, you know, hats off to each one of them and hats off to Sheila ji, who kept on, you know, encouraging, you know, people. Amazing.
But we can work together. Women can do magic.
Yes, that is true. But Sheila ji, हम जानना चाहते हैं शिवानी को कहाँ का, उन्होंने अपना सोर्स नहीं बताया, उनको बताना चाहिए.
नहीं, उनका सोर्स है वहाँ. Today she is present. शिवानी जी.
शिवानी कहाँ हो तुम? जरा बताओ कहाँ से लाए ये सब तुम?
नहीं, सूरत के वहाँ से. सूरत में हमारी ब्रांच वगैरह है ना, वहाँ lot of Parsis are there. तो वहाँ से उनको कोई मिली इंफॉर्मेशन. उन्होंने काफी फोटोज वगैरह भी भेजे थे.
मैंने सुना है कि बाबा शिवानी बहन तो इतिहास बहुत जानती. अगर किसी को इतिहास आता है AIWC का, तो मैं सोचती हूँ शिवानी जी को मैंने देखा है. एक एक चीज, कब बापनू घर शुरू हुआ, कब क्या अमेजिंग मेमोरी शी हैज. मतलब उनके साथ बैठकर बड़ा ज्ञान. मैथिली अमेजिंग, अमेजिंग. कांग्रेचुलेशन मैथिली.
थैंक यू. थैंक
यू.
फरीदा जी, जो शिवानी जी ने भेजा मैं आपको फॉरवर्ड करती हूँ. बहुत मैसेज भेजा उन्होंने.
ठीक है, भेजिए मुझे. I will find. Actually, the Parsis landed in Surat first. उनके जब वो थे तो, and as refugees they came there. Later on, Salarjung invited them to Hyderabad. So that is the thing.
आपने बहुत अच्छा बोला फरीदा. It was so interesting.
Thank you, thank you.
Can I say something?
It was on a lighter vein. Lighter vein.
Dr. Karishma is asking.
आगे से थोड़ा पर्सनल पे बोलना चाहिए.
What Dr. Karishma is saying?
She is asking कि उनको material, तो Dr. Karishma, you can contact the library through the president. You please contact
Karishma, amazing.
ठीक है, and you'll get. You are writing something.
Karishma, where are you, Karishma ji? I don't have your email ID. Whatever email ID we got, no, वो दिया था वो correct नहीं था. It was bouncing back.
Is it?
Yes.
So I'm copying. Is that okay, Dr. Karishma? If it's okay, please say yes. Otherwise, because I have copied this. This is fine. I have copied it and we'll get back to you. Okay, so shall we close this meeting? Although one doesn't feel like, but everything has to end.
See, ask Supriya if she has to say anything.
Yes, so she has to, I'll invite her formally for a vote of thanks, or we have some more.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Supriya.
Can you come closer, Supriya? Earlier your voice was...
Is it okay? Is it echoed?
Yes.
Yeah, major echo. You are in two places.
Is it okay?
Supriya, you are in two places. Yeah. Can you remove one? आप दो जगह दिख रहे हो. There are two.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, this is fine. But again, can you disconnect one source since you are from two places?
Hey, so you know the other. So shall I begin? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Come closer. Come a little closer. Yeah.
It's okay.
We can't hear you.
बहुत faint है voice.
Now can you hear?
बहुत कम आवाज आ रही है. सुप्रिया, या तो आप उधर से बोल लो जो दूसरा है जगह. दो जगह हो आप ना?
हाँ, मुझे जरा प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है।
अब जब अब अच्छी आती है when you are at both the places, so can you remove one?
How
Yeah,
is it now?
it's not loud, not very loud. We can make do.
Better.
How is it now?
Yeah, this is better.
This is better?
Yeah, okay.
I'll
No,
switch
echo.
off my camera.
नहीं, there is an echo, Supriya. Major echo.
अभी कैसा है?
हाँ, better. ठीक है.
Better?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about this complete
No,
chaos of my connectivity.
I would also request
So,
you to
I'm
propose
here
vote
to.
of thanks, please. Yeah. After your comment, propose a vote of thanks, please.
The comment was just her Hyderabad life, which Faridaji has already covered. And as she said, the Parsis of Hyderabad, and these are the oldest family of Parsis. Who was there? Her father-in-law, Faridoonji, was actually in the Nizam's court. After that, her husband, Rustomji, he also was in the Nizam's court. And after Rustomji died early, after that she shifted to Bombay. And as Faridaji has told us, she had two daughters, Roshan and Firoza, out of which Roshan got married and went to Pakistan, as she mentioned. Firoza remained in Bombay and Hillaji was with her. And she had two daughters. Roshan had two daughters. So Firoza put everything of a property into these two daughters' names. They are Shadana and Zareen. So these two kept some touch with mostly Bombay because they were in Pakistan most of the time. So there was very little touch with Hyderabad. Only the Parsi families, whatever they knew about Hilla, we just could share. And thank you, Farida ji, for that personal sketch of hers. Shall I begin my formal vote of thanks? This is Supriya Bhale Rao, Joint Secretary of AIWC, delivering my vote of thanks for this program. It is appropriate and obvious for me to thank our President, Mrs. Sheila Kakade, first, on behalf of everyone present here for the webinar, to have an idea of starting this webinar series on our past presidents, which is not only taking us to the initial period of AIWC, but also telling us the success stories of theirs in building up our AIWC organization. I thank Secretary General Kuljit ji and Treasurer Rehana ji in supporting this work and being a part of making this webinar a success. I now thank today's speakers. First speaker was Mrs. Raminder Kalsi. I don't know whether she's still there or not. She's the Secretary of South Punjab branch. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us a glimpse of Lady Abdul Qadir's life, and we appreciated your involvement in it. I thank Mrs. Maithili Jagannathan, Shadara Project Coordinator. Wonderful presentation, Maithili ji, on Lady Abdul Qadir's conference. You created the scene of the conference of 1933 in Calcutta in front of our eyes, and also you gave us a gist of what the agenda used to be in those days for the meetings, and also the 3-day long conference and all the agenda and the dignitaries who visited the conference. Thank you, Maithili ji. I thank Dr. Asha Chandra, President of All India Women's Education Fund Association. She talked about our 9th President, Hilla Rustomji Faridoonji. And I must thank her. I think she's already left. But thank you, Asha ji, for talking about our president and showing your minutes book, which has been a great source of your speech. It gave us a fairly good idea of the meticulous work Hilla Rustomji has done. And we loved your narrations about the lady Hilla. about her life as well as her work and showing us the minutes again. Thank you, Asha ji. I thank Dr. Karishma Koka. We can't thank you enough, Dr. Karishma. It was very lovely to have your presentation. She's from London, a neuroscientist of London, also a co-founder of Ultimate Achievements Academy and member of Zoroastrian Fund of Europe. You have given us the information about her career and work in detail, and mostly which was new to our AIWC. Though, you know, it was about the involvement of Hilaji from the AIWC, but this information was not accessible to us. Your presentation has been extremely elaborate, Dr. Karishma, and you seem to have done a lot of research for this. In the process, we are the gainers. We have gained a lot from your presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Karishma. We'll be in touch with you further. I also thank Mrs. Shehnaz Kama for helping Dr. Karishma in collecting the information and appearing on the webinar for a while. I thank you, Faridoonji, the trustee of Educational Trust, for giving information on Hilaji's personal life and about the Parsi lifestyle in Hyderabad. I thank all the patrons. I see Mrs. Beena Jain, Mrs. Veena Kohli, and Mrs. Rakesh Dhawan. I also thank all the vice presidents present here and the zonal organizers who are attending this webinar, along with the member in charges. We don't thank enough for being here as an audience, and all the members of AIWC who have attended this webinar. Because of you, this webinar series is going ahead because you are showing a lot of interest. And not last but the least, I have to thank Yutika. Yutika as an excellent moderator. Thank you, Yutika. So
thank you.
This is all I had to say.
One thing is left out. We have to thank you.
You are muted.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I think now it's unmuted. Can you hear me? Supriya, we have to thank you for hosting this and for the beautiful invite that you every time spin out. I don't know how you do that. You just present it in front of everyone. Lovely colors, ravishing colors. So thank you, Supriya, for everything. And I thank everyone, all the audience, all the chat messages. I want to thank, because it's difficult to thank everyone, but there are a lot of appreciation there. So
Yes.
I would like to thank everyone, Geeta ji, Chandra Prabha ji, everyone who has been messaging. Thank you, everyone. And the next webinar is very soon, Sheila ji. I believe.
Yes, 24th. 24th, we are going to
20
have the webinar.
20 अप्रैल को भी है Earth Day.
Next is very soon.
24th.
24th April. Be ready, everyone. Same time,
Yes.
same place. We meet again. Good evening. It was nice to have you. Bye bye.
Thank you all. Very good.
Thank you. Very nice program was.
बहुत ही अच्छा.
Thank you.
First class program. Sheila ji, fantastic.
अरे
Fantastic program.
और इनवाइट बहुत अच्छा बनाया सुप्रिया तुमने, बेहद.
सबने मिलकर काम किया, इसलिए सब कुछ अच्छा हो गया.
हाँ, सब कुछ अच्छा हो गया.
पर बहुत अच्छा हुआ, बहुत अच्छा.
बहुत इंफॉर्मेशन मिली. बहुत इंफॉर्मेशन मिली.
बहुत
हमने तो
इंफॉर्मेशन.
इतना सीखा.
लोग आते गए. My mom wants to say something. Go on. लोग आते. मैं अकेला था. लोग आते गए. कारवा बनता गया.
Right.
Good.
सही है. Okay. Bye.
Geeta ji, please do share your details with me.
Thank you so much, Sheila ji, for having me.
I'll just share my phone number and email ID so that we can be in touch.
Thank you very much, madam.
You are in proper London?
Yes, madam. We are in proper London, but our home is in Bangalore. And in fact, my father is born in Hyderabad. Born and brought up in Madras, Chennai, but his family is from Hyderabad. So I have great connections to Hyderabad.
Okay. My son is in London.
I see. Where?
Webley.
Oh, not far at all. Just 10 miles from here. Not far, actually. Wonderful. If
we
you
can
could
meet
share
sometime.
I hope so. If you could share the details, the reason I asked is that American journal Fezana has invited me to write an article about Hilla, Faridoonji, Rustomji.
I will share the details. Yeah.
And I will quote the sources properly, and I will share the draft with you before it is sent for publication, so that if you see any errors, you will feel free, please, to correct.
Definitely. It was really wonderful having you with us, because you really, you did your work so enthusiastically with all your heart. Thank you very much, Mama. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You've all done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Recording में है ले लिया क्या? हाँ, good.
Sheila madam, your phone number and email address, please.
I'll send it to you on your WhatsApp today.
Sure. Lovely. Thank you very much.
I've taken down your number.
And put me in touch with Farida ji, please.
Okay, sure. I'll share her number also. Bye-bye.
And Shivani ji. Shivani Mehta.
Okay.
जरूर जरूर शिवानी जी से मिलना है.